Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the DC Capstone Report. It's great to be back with you guys this week. I hope you enjoyed last week. Lance putting up all the pictures of the SEC Media Days and the videos. Lance does a great job in the studio getting all this together. It wouldn't be possible without his handiwork on the recordings and the videos and the great job that he does. I want to thank Lance. Big shout out to him. He's doing a great job. Working with him on this podcast is one of my favorite things that I do, because I see how much pleasure all of the listeners out there get from his videos and the pictures that he posts up. So hope you enjoyed those, the media days. Today on the podcast, we're going to take a look in the first segment, a review of the SEC media days. We'll take a look at what the players said, what Coach Saban said, and what we can glean from that. In the second segment, we're going to take a look at the Alabama coaching changes this year, and discuss maybe now why we understand those coaches changes were made after Coach Saban's remarks at Media Days. And finally, in the third segment, we're going to take a look at beginning our preparation for the fall and the upcoming season with 38 days away. And we're going to take a look beginning with the defensive line. The DC Capstone Report is featured each Tuesday morning on Tide 102.9, The Morning Blitz with Martin Houston. You can listen live at Tide1029.com. Well, here in the first segment, we're going to take a review of Media Days this past week in Hoover, Alabama. As I said in the opening remarks, Lance did such a great job of reviewing and being at Media Days and getting a opportunity to put up pictures and post everything there on the website. We really appreciate Lance's work in that. So he was there. Got to see a lot of things take place. Alabama sent 3 players. They sent Tua Tagovailoa, Jerry Jeudy, and Dylan Moses. And then, of course, Coach Saban was there and spoke as well. One of the things that I think was so impressed with was the way that the Alabama players represented the University of Alabama in public speaking. I don't think you can not talk about that at the beginning, because we've seen players before not represent universities well, and I think all 3 of the players, Tua, Jerry Jeudy, and Dylan Moses, were well spoken, well thought out, well prepared to what they were going to say, and I think they all did a good job. Tua was, as you can imagine, everybody was wanting to talk to him, and he was very generous with his time. And I think he said some things in his speaking time, both on the radio shows as he went around the room, and then also to the actual press conference. I want to just touch on a couple of things that kind of stood out to me. One was when he spoke, you could tell that he still had a bitter taste in his mouth, as all of the players did, about the loss to Clemson. And I believe he spoke about using that to get better, that it may have been a good thing that they lost. Coach Saban always talks about how he coaches better after a loss than he does after a win. So it looks to me like Coach Tua is taking on that same mentality that he can learn from this loss. And that's what you want your player to do. You want your player to come out ready to do better this year. And so I think that that was one thing, was a telltale sign that he's getting over that loss and getting wanting to do better. Second thing I think was important about what he spoke about, how he talked about making changes to get better and to do better. And I think a lot of folks say, well, how can Tua get better? Well, there's a lot of things he can do, and he identified some of those. One of the things I think that he talked about was his being in better shape. I think he's lost weight, maybe down to 212, 215. And I think that's important. You see he's dedicated to doing a better job and getting in shape. Makes him make some better plays, make some good plays down the road. I think he also talked about leadership, and that was one of the things I think that maybe he didn't have time. Remember, he was thrust into the position in the last seconds of the national championship game against Georgia, wins that game, and then thrust into a heated battle competition with Jalen Hurts all last year. And I think he focused on the playing and the throwing the ball and making the right plays. And he didn't do a good job focusing on leadership, and he admitted that. He said that this year he thinks he can do a better job with the little things, such as, and I think I quote him when he said, going to breakfast, showing up for breakfast, showing up for lunch, showing up in the training room even when I don't have to get treatment. And what he's talking about there is building a camaraderie with the players. And I think if he can do that, you not only need to know your wide receivers, you need to know your running backs and your offensive line and people on the defensive side of the ball. You need to be a leader for the whole team. And I think if he does that, he's definitely going to bring his game to the next level this year. Now, Jerry Jeudy, when he spoke, I think it's impressive that I've always said that we have the best receiving core in the nation. And of course, he is the spokesman for that receiving core at media days. And he spoke about the brotherhood. Somebody asked him, there's so many good players, 4 or 5 players, and on the team, the wide receivers that want the ball. How do you do that? And he talked about the brotherhood, that they run routes for each other to get each other open, and downfield blocking and that sort of thing. So I think Jerry Jeudy handled himself well in his interview about that. He also spoke about working out with Antonio Brown and how seeing someone at the professional level still working on their craft, have not made it yet. He talked about that and continuing to get better. So you would think that the Biletnikoff Award winner from last year might be complacent, but it doesn't look like that. It looks like he's ready to go in this season and even do better than he did last year. And then finally, Dylan Moses spoke. And, Dylan Moses is he's always been a quiet leader. He said that he always led by example. And I think this year he's turned that into leading more, not only by example, but also by speaking and talking out. And I think that's up to his game. A couple of things he said of the quote that he made. He said he wanted to be on the field all the time. He wanted to be the person to call the right plays, to put everybody in the right positions to make the best plays. And he wanted to be the person that everybody knew that he had their back and would do that. So I think what he was saying was he wants to improve on last year. So he wants to be the signal caller, the person that runs the defense, to put everybody in the right positions, and wants to stay on the field. And last year he had to come off in situational, and this year, being the person that calls the plays, he'll get to stay on the field. So I think he's looking forward to having a good year as well. So I think all 3 of those players did a great job of representing the university in their speech and in their conduct and the way they carry themselves, and also what they said led us to believe that this year is going to have a great offensive team coming up and a really good improved defensive team. Also coming out of media days, they have these preseason All-American preseason teams, and surprisingly on offense, every one of Alabama's players, I think 12 players on offense got listed, including the punt returner Jalen Waddle, who got first team punt returner and then second team all-purpose and wide receiver. That means that every player on Alabama's team except their center and one wide receiver got selected to a preseason All-American team. Now, that's, when you think about that, that's just unheard of. I think Alabama broke their own record for the number of players. But I want to talk about that one wide receiver that was left off, and that's Devontae Smith. I think that everybody is sleeping on Devontae Smith, and that he's the one that's being overlooked. When I look at Devontae Smith, and I've been reviewing some game tapes from last year, just kind of get ready for this upcoming season, Devontae Smith, to me, has great hands, great quickness, quick first step. He's a lot faster than most people give him credit for. I think his speed is deceptive. And he runs some great routes. I think he's going to be a great pro receiver where he runs the routes and hand placement. But the one thing that impresses me and jumps off the page when you look at his film is his downfield blocking. And so I love a player who blocks for other receivers. And I'm hoping to see him even raise his game to the next level, that he may not have made the preseason All-American team, but he might make a postseason All-American team. Well, Coach Saban talked as well in the media days, and a review of media days wouldn't be complete without talking about one of the things he said. I think it's a buzz around everywhere. Of course, he said we need to get back to the Alabama factor, and of course he said that they need to improve, and people thought he was making excuses about losing to Clemson, but I think he one telling thing that he said was that during the last of the season, it appeared to him that the coaches were distracted, that there were some coaching distractions that was going on, and that the ones that were coaching and looking forward to head coaching positions, heads may not have been in the right space, may have been distracted, and that caused some of the problems on the team going that way. Well, I don't think he was talking about Mike Loxley here. I think he was talking about Dan Enos and maybe some other coaches that were looking to leave and move. And I believe that that possibly is a distraction, and I think that sets us up to understand a little bit about how Coach Saban hired these new coaches that are going to coach us this year. So I think that's a kind of a telling thing when he talks about he wants to get back to Alabama Factory. He wants people that's bought into this team, this game, this going forward. So I look for great things to come after reviewing media days. I'm excited, more excited about the upcoming season, and it will be here before you know it, folks. 38 days from the day Alabama will be kicking off against Duke in the Kickoff Classic. Well, in the second segment, I want to talk about a little bit about the coaching staff that Alabama's put together. And, Alabama's put together quite a good coaching staff coming up this year. And I want to talk about a little bit to kind of give us an understanding of where I think what Coach Saban was thinking about when he put this staff together. I just talked about in the first segment about him saying that there were some coaches distracted about moving on to positions. And Coach Saban's always been great about wants his coaches to better themselves, to move from position coaches to coordinators, from coordinators to head coaches. But I think this past season was a season where we had a whole large number, and the big turnover lets you know a large number of coaches who were looking to move to the next level. Well, fast forward to how he filled those slots. And I think that Coach Saban has filled those slots in a way that kind of lets you know what his thinking was last year. He's filled them with coaches that are going to be some folks that are young and up-and-comers who are looking to use Alabama as a stepping stone to the next level. But he's also filled it with some folks who already made it to the next level and know the Alabama way and are coming back. So I think it was interesting. You got Steve Sarkisian coming back as offensive coordinator. He's already been a head coach in the NCAA. He's already been a coordinator in the NFL. So he comes back here with maybe some more solid foundation here to stay for a while. You couple that with Kyle Flood, who has been a head coach in the NCAA and a coordinator with the Falcons there, and an offensive line coach at Alabama now. That comes with some great experience, and maybe he's not looking to go off and make a name for himself to move. Also, Charles Kelly comes in, a longtime Alabama native of Ozark, Alabama. He's coached at FSU for a long time, has a great history of NFL draft picks going into secondary from FSU. And here he comes to Alabama with maybe not aspirations of moving to a head coaching job. Then he's got Sal Sinceri, returns to Alabama, been a staff coordinator at Florida State, and now coming back to the University of Alabama. That coupled with the younger guys like Jeff Banks and Pete Golding and Holman Wiggins, Charlie Huff, Brian Baker, all these people who are coming in give you some opportunities to have a great staff together. And I think you see the older guys and the younger guys meshing better in this staff, and I believe it's going to be a big important factor in how this team is better than last year's team. Less distractions, more honed into what's going on with the Alabama way and making opportunities for this team to do better. So I like this coaching staff. I like the way Coach Saban's put it together, and I believe that he's put it together in a way that's going to show you that some of these coaches are here for the long haul, and maybe some moving on to other jobs, but we might have a little more consistency in the Alabama coaching for the next couple of years. Well, in the third segment today on the podcast, I want to take a look at preview. As I said earlier, 38 days from the day Alabama kicks off. So we got 38 days. Within that 38 days, in the coming weeks, we're going to be previewing the upcoming season and looking at different positions and where Alabama can add and improve some of the players that might be able to make a difference in the fall practice to get some playing time and that sort of thing. So practice will be starting soon, and we'll know some more of this as that breaks down and happens. But today I want to start talking about and focus on the defensive line, those big ones up front. Alabama's always had a great defensive line that was a run stopper. In the last couple of years, we've had Deron Payne, Quinion Williams have just plugged those holes and stopped, get them to get them to focus in on stopping the run and plugging up those holes in the middle and occupying two blockers. And so who's going to step up for Alabama this year and do that? Well, I think we got three opportunities here to really make a case for three players. I on the defensive line to make a difference. And we got some young guys that are coming along as well. So the first player I want to highlight is Raekwon Davis. A senior. He comes back. He has the opportunity to go pro. It was a year where the draft was full of defensive linemen. He saw an opportunity to come back, to hone his craft, to do better, to not only do better for the team, but to do better for himself in the upcoming draft. So I think he comes back on a mission. I think he's going to come back with a renewed vigor, a renewed spirit, to try to do better than last year, to show that may have been an off year for him. And I really believe that he can contribute this year on the defensive line and be a big distractor for the offense, be a big problem for the offensive line, especially in the pass rush and stopping of the run. So I look for Raekwon Davis to contribute and just do a great job this coming year. The second player I want to highlight is LeBron Ray. I think LeBron Ray has been sitting in the wings waiting for his opportunity to be the next big thing at Alabama. And, I think Deshaun Hand comes to mind. Deshaun Hand waited and waited and waited his turn till he finally got to come and really contribute on a team, and then made it in the NFL and is still playing, I think, in the NFL today. So I think LeBron Ray is that type of character. Has shown spots of brilliance, some spot work, been great. Just hadn't got the opportunity as much to play. I think if he's healthy this year, this is his coming out year, coming out party. He gives an added bonus for the opportunity to rush the passer, to stop the run, and everything that's opportunities coming up this year. I think LeBron Ray and Raekwon Davis working together is a formidable duo on the defensive line. The other player is a young player that just emerged in spring practice. And I look for DJ Dale. DJ Dale to come in and have an opportunity to fill that gap, that void left by Quinnen Williams in the middle. I think that the upside for him is big. He can only get better. He showed flashes of brilliance in spring practice. Offensive linemen were talking about him just like they were talking about Quinnen Williams. He has an opportunity to come in and be a run stopper, plug up that middle, and be a force on the defensive line. So, outside of him, you got some young guys who are going to step up. You got some guys last year like Stephon Wynn, Fandarian Mathis, who played a little last year, get to come in and do that. Then you got freshmen like Ishmael Sofshire and Antonio Alfano. You got players that show some five-star abilities that could come and make a difference. But I think overall our defensive line is really in a good posture to make a difference this year. And so I give it an improvement over last year's defensive line. I know it's hard to do that with Quinnen Williams, Isaiah Buggs, and others gone to the NFL. But I think Raekwon Davis coming back and LeBron Ray have a chance to play more, and DJ Dale's emergence just might be a better defensive line across the board with some really good young guys to give them some experience later in the year. Might be with one of the better defensive lines that Alabama's put out there. Well, thank you for listening today. It's been a pleasure. And we'll be back on the podcast next week. Until then, roll tide.